Hello again everybody and welcome. Recently I done a trip to Egypt, something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And the land is simply magical. The division between the Nile Delta and the Sahara Desert is visible from almost every vantage point. And one would think that it was almost magic how the dry and harsh desert turns green with just the addition of a little water. My journey was about trying to understand Egypt, its people, its monuments. As everyone would know, there are many conspiracies and ideas on how things were done. But I've opted to take a different approach. I have opted to look at what the Egyptians themselves had to say. And to understand the Egyptians, you've got to understand their gods. So that will be our starting point. Over the course of my journey, I took over 10,000 photographs and 120 gigabytes of footage, all of which I will share with you. So let's start our journey of the Egyptian gods. The oldest source, or at least the oldest source that I could find, was the pyramid text, based in the Pyramid of Saqqara. Indeed, the Pyramid of Saqqara is more interesting than those at Gaza, having been to both. Joseph's pyramid is said to be the first pyramid, but like all Egyptian history, it's not clear. There may have been earlier mud brick versions of that, but on this we're not sure. Now, of the Egyptian gods, there is said to be some 1,400 of them. Way too many to do in a video. So I've focused on the major ones and the ones focused around the Egyptian pyramid texts, as well as the most spread out ones. So of the 1,400, I will be looking at 45, and there is the family tree of the gods. Now, the appearance of the gods is kind of like an algebra. The Egyptians put people's bodies with animals' heads and a range of different mishmash of things to give their gods appearance, and over the course of time the god's appearance changed. This was both divine and political. Many of the temples and so on and so forth in Egypt were political organizations. Then, as in now, the church is a very political place. And it is interesting to find that even the stories of the Bible can be related back to Egyptian times, with the names of our gods too changing. There is absolutely no difference between the Christian God, Yahweh, Jehovah, Mungu, or Sohadimu, but they sound like different entities. Despite the opinion of many, the development of our society did not start with aliens. In fact, it started with agriculture. However, several things needed to be in place for hunter-gatherers to switch to an agricultural society. There needed to be the grains that could be harvested and the animals that could be domesticated. Collection of grains is said to have begun some 104,000 years ago in the Middle East. Where exactly, we do not know. Domestication of animals, particularly cattle, started some 10,500 years ago in Asia, of all places. The exact location of this, again, is a mystery. Bringing things into the Egyptian perspective, some 8,000 years ago they were growing barley and aswan, and with the oldest known grain silo in the world said to be some 11,000 years old and in Jordan. No doubt you're probably wondering where all this is going. When human beings had the luxury of a full stomach and to be not concerned about their fragile existence, it gave them time to think. And in this period of thinking, they began to think about how the world and indeed the universe was created. They could see that where water was, life flourished, and that was the beginning of the first Egyptian god, the god Nun, which ironically in our language means nothing, and in their language means empty space or the waters of eternity. Speaking on behalf of someone who doesn't have a wife, people tend to demand that you have one. And in the case of Nun, his wife was Naunet. Even the waters of eternity needed a sky, but the sky was both above and below, and Naunet was in the form of a snake. With no major temples being made to Nun or Naunet, it poses the question of their importance in the universe, even though they were the beginning of everything. However, in times of extreme drought, Nun was prayed to. It seems the Egyptians would pray to any god necessary to get the desired results. Across the eternity of time, at some point, Nun felt the urge to create. He had the power to do so, but he had never exercised it, with a fire burning inside. This could have been the result of one or three gods. The gods Ra, Atum, and Aman are said to be the supreme creators. However, looking at them closely, they seem to have slightly different jobs. Ra is said to be the king of the gods and the creator of the sun, and he rides the celestial barge across the sky, being reborn every day and moving to the underworld every night. In the case of Atum, he created the earth, as well as giving birth to Shu, the God of atmosphere, and Tefnu, the God of moisture. And Aman, his role was the creation of life, and he is said to be the hidden god, always present but never seen. You look at the creation stories from the religions of Abraham, being Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. They speak of the waters of creation and the land of the waters being separated, followed by that most famous statement. However, in the Egyptian story, the embers of creation were slowly but surely simmering away till they got to a point of the biggest explosion in history, and this was the birth of Ra. Let there be light, and there was light. The ancient religion of the Egyptians was thousands of years older than the fourth-mentioned ones. And the beginning of the universe and the birth of Ra was a very bright event. All of the subatomic particles released condensed to form hydrogen. And Ra created gravity to condense the hydrogen atoms together to form those early suns. And in those early suns, yet heavier elements were generated, and a new God was now created. Calm again returned to the Waters of Nun. But they had not finished their work. The god Atum brought himself into existence. Standing upon the Benben mound, he finished his own creation, then travelled the considerable distance and created the earth. He then secreted his bodily fluids and created the earth. As the planetesimals, the comets and the meteorites coalesced into the earth, Atum was not satisfied. He then started to masturbate, and the result of that masturbation were two new gods, Shu the God of air and Tefnu the God of moisture. This then would allow for life to exist on earth. Despite effectively being brother and sister, incest was common in Egypt. Shu and Tefnu mated, and the result of their mating was yet another two gods, Gab, the god of the earth, and Nut, the god of the sky. However, in paradise there was a problem. The gods Gab and Nut refused to separate, and they created many other gods. More about them later. Atum was angry at this and ordered the god Shu to separate them, and with great effort he managed to. In many temples around Egypt you see the following symbol of Shu holding Nut and Gab apart, the god of the wind separating us from the sky. It's obvious that the Egyptians had some understanding of the atmosphere and the way it works. By their nature, earthquakes appear mysterious and powerful, and most places in the world experience them. Egypt among those places, and very possibly has experienced tidal waves in the past. We all know that the hot magma moving up from the earth, cooling, then returning from the earth, causes the earth's plates to move. But for the Egyptians, this was the laughter of Gab, a way of making sense of a mysterious and powerful force. On the roof of almost every temple and tomb in Egypt is an image of Nut. you can see her swallowing the sun, said to protect it, and then guiding its passage through the underworld, and then in the morning giving birth to the sun again. This is the same as the journey of souls. But where did the Egyptians get this idea? Well, in truth, Nut is the god of the Milky Way, the sky that we freely see. And this is the way the Milky Way looks on a dark night. No one should be surprised that the Egyptians' explanation for the world was based on the way that they could see it. Another interesting point is that of gender. In most cultures they speak of Mother Earth and the sky is a male figure. However, in Egyptian mythology, the sky is a female figure and the earth is a male figure. And now it's time to confuse everybody. I'm confused, so it's only fair that we share the love. The god Aman, which ironically when Christians end their prayers they say Amen, they're actually praying to an Egyptian god. Beginning is not known. It is not suggested, it is not written about. But I guess it is fair to assume that he began in the Waters of Nun on the Benben mound like other gods. Later in his career he got a promotion known as Amun-Ra. His colour changed from brown to blue in this period of time. If you remember at the beginning of this video I said that the Egyptian gods were somewhat of a algebra. In this case the text says that the shape of Amun or Amun-Ra is unknowable, unthinkable, unfathomable. Yet they give him a shape in their hieroglyphics. So we will reconstruct his creation as was done for the other gods, but it may well be the case that Ra, Atum and Amun were in fact the same figure. But this is the confusion of the Egyptian religion. And he had a special place amongst the pharaohs. It is said that he was their protector, and on occasion he got cozy with a few of the pharaohs' wives, harbouring future pharaohs. Quite an interesting figure, and one who obviously cheated on his wife because his wife's name was Mut. More about her later. One more piece of trivia that people may find interesting is that in the case of the Benben mound, there are a number of reconstructions throughout Egypt in the shape of a pyramid. Is it possible that the Benben mound is the model for the pyramids and the beginning of the Egyptians' love of pyramids? It is said that there is a secret word, and anyone who knows it can ask Amun for anything, and he is obliged to grant this. It is interesting that this secret word culture spreads across a number of religions and secret societies, with Muslims too sharing the belief that there is a secret word and Allah must grant the wish to those that are bearing it. But one of the most interesting things are the Freemasons. They claim links back to the Egyptian pyramid builders. As a matter of fact, the all-seeing eye is a pyramid with an eye and a detached capstone. And they also claim to be involved in the construction of the Temple of Solomon. Well, stonemasons were involved, so there's not much chance that they was not. And the master mason on site was known as Hiram Abif. and his apprentices wanted to know his secret word. He refused to reveal the secret word to his apprentices because they were unworthy, and they murdered him. In lodges right around the world today, when people become a third-degree Mason, they are symbolically murdered and cannot give away the secret. Upon the murder of Hiram Abiff, the secret word was lost to time, and none other than King Solomon and a group of other senior Freemasons put in place a temporary secret word until the true secret word could be found. That secret word in Hebrew is Jabalon. Now to Aman's wife, Moot. Australian slang, the spelling of that kind is mutt, which relates to a mongrel dog. This is a highly insulting and unjustified thing. Moot means mother, and it is the belief that she is the mother to all things. She was born of the Waters of Nun, and she is said to have protected the queens of Egypt. Her Then Aman fathered not only all life, but the god of the moon, Khensu. Her popularity was mainly in Lower Egypt, with her and her husband coming into existence something like this. Few of us appreciate the role of the moon, for it is doubtful that life would have started on planet Earth without it, and it is ironic that the gods, both Aman and Mut, who are said to be the creators of life, bore the god who was in charge of the moon, not its creator, but in charge of it. The pyramid texts do not make it clear how or who created the moon, although it is quite possible that it was created by Atum when he was creating the earth. And interestingly enough, the creation of the moon is also somewhat of a mystery to science. The present theory is that a Mars-sized object struck the Earth, broke away a great lot of molten material, and it just happened to rise to a level sufficient that the Earth's gravity would not capture it. That position is believed to be 22,526 kilometers from the Earth's surface. And over time, the moon has slowly moved away to its present average position of 384,400 kilometers away. And for anybody who is wondering, the diameter of the moon is 3,474.8 kilometers. So Khensu, the name itself, means traveler or wanderer. And interestingly, he is seen as a god of healing, with Nubian kings calling upon him in times of illness. Nubia was once totally in charge of Egypt, and it shares a lot of Egyptian culture, actually having more pyramids than Egypt. Khensu is supposed to control the phases of the moon, and the Egyptians had some knowledge of the moon and its effect on tides. And during times of eclipse, or worst of all, total eclipse, There were many ceremonies and prayers dedicated to Khensu to restore him, as they believed that he was being threatened by Apophis. Interestingly enough, Khensu in his spare time helped Ra battle Apophis, and Apophis' intention was to swallow the sun. Much of the god's efforts were in place to protect the sun, or more correctly, the light, for the underworld wished to expand and plunge the world into darkness by means of the services of Apophis. We had Nut, who was both swallowing and giving birth to the sun on a nightly basis. We also had Ra in his celestial barge doing battle with Apophis, and on occasion being assisted by Khensu. Many tombs and temples have artwork reflecting the gravity of this battle. The Egyptians also made connections with the female menstrual cycle and the cycles of the moon. Again, another connection to the creation of life. Khensu was seen as providing light at night, holding back the darkness with his limited powers. We have so much to be thankful for in terms of the moon. It stabilizes the Earth's orbit. Without it, the orbit would become almost completely random in terms of rotation and angle of eclipse to the sun. Rotational speed and the Earth are tidally locked. As a result, we only ever get to see one face of the moon. Please observe the far and unseen side of the moon. It also protects us from some of the meteorites and comets from striking the Earth. So with the moon in place and under proper control, it was time to get down to the business of creating life on Earth. Texts speak of Aman creating life. However, I suspect very strongly that his wife Mut may have been involved, as wives are very useful in that regard. And this creation of life by the text was not restricted to just Earth. It was said to be in the cosmos. And if we introduce a little science, the Drake equation mathematically proves that the universe must be teeming with life. We do not know how Aman created life in the cosmos, but we do know how life was created on Earth. And it happens something like this. biblical verses and practical things follow a process, and after the creation of life, Amun is said to have created human beings. The exact wording of the text says, "the peoples of Egypt." Unquestionably the life-giving waters of the Nile River, and in ancient times when the topsoil was renewed by the annual flood, is the reason for Egypt both then and now. Flanked by the Eye of Ra and the Eye of Horus. Sadly, we are at the end of the video. But there are many more dimensions amongst the gods to explore. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you like this one, part 2 is coming.